Happy day everyone! Welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about a story about a girl who has a crush on a boy. Tale as old as time, eh? So she follows him to a basement and gets stuck in there with his girlfriend. So we're going to check out to see how that turns out. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, it'll really help the channel out. Okay, let's check it out.
I was going to tell him how I felt. The moment I'd waited for my whole life had arrived. But then I saw him climbing into the tornado shelter, and that should have been my first warning not to keep following him, because things were about to get super weird.
Okay, some kind of storm shelter here? Ooh, maybe a psycho murder.
The rain was really pouring now, so I closed the lid. The last thing I wanted was to flood the shelter. Not on a special night like tonight. I'd never been this close to James before, just the two of us alone. Except,
Just the two of us alone.
we weren't alone. As soon as I closed the lid, I heard a girl's voice. No! I started panicking and decided this had been a stupid idea.
Girl? What a girl gonna be doing in there?
Then the girl said, "Did anyone see you come in here? I hope we didn't get caught." And James replied, "No, I don't think so. Oh no, wait, there was a girl from my school, but she wouldn't say anything. She's such a loser."
You think she's a loser? But I mean, like, I'm just kind of thinking, what does she expect? Like, has anybody ever gone after your crush into a storm shelter and expected it, without him knowing, and expected him to say good stuff? But if you say, hey, you want to grab a coffee or something, so they say no, then you know your answer without being in a messy situation like this.
It felt like he'd shoved a knife through my heart, and then I felt angry. I had to get out of there.
Oh my god, that's like one of my worst nightmares. Being trapped with no food, no water, and you're just basically stuck and waiting to starve. I mean, that's like one of my biggest nightmares. It's almost like being buried alive.
I could hear James bashing on the lid of the shelter, but obviously it wouldn't open. And then he shouted down to me and asked if I'd done this, and if I thought it was funny. No, James.
Did you do that? Oh my god, I saw you go up there. You must have done something to the locks.
Then he started shouting about how he had to get out ASAP because the next day was his big football game that was going to guarantee him a scholarship to a top college. He said he had.
Oh, so this guy's got a lot riding. Like, basically a full ride scholarship based on a trial performance. If it was like the night before your big day, wouldn't you kind of be at home, like chilling, you know, like just eating snacks, making sure you're healthy and well hydrated for the next day? Not like climbing to some shelter and then potentially being locked?
Otherwise, he'd be stuck in this stupid town forever. I sat up and looked around with my flashlight on my phone and realized there was literally nothing down there except for some sandbags and an old scratchy blanket that looked like 1,000 bugs might be living in it. This is all your fault. You've ruined everything.
Hey, how are you gonna blame her? Like, did she really ruin everything? I mean, like, okay, I'm not sure if like this redhead girl like just triggered some kind of latch up there that caused the door to like fall down on them. Bitches. When they got like a rival in the room next to their mans, here, they're gonna be taking it out on her, of course. They're gonna be like, oh, your fault, you know, like all the miseries of my life, it's all your fault. Be good.
And I learned her name was Amy. She must have gone to another school because I'd never seen her before.
Like, look at her pants. They're like literally pulled up to her thighs, and her shirt's like a little tiny little waistband. Real sleut.
Yes. Eventually, I told them I was sorry, even though it wasn't my fault.
Hey girl, if it's not your fault, don't admit it. Like, as soon as you admit something is your fault, people are gonna start always associating you with that from now on. So like, if it's not your fault, babe, just don't. Just don't. I mean, people will always grab onto your worst qualities, your worst traits as a human, and they'll remember you for that for the rest of their life. So if you didn't do something, don't admit to it. Just gonna be pulled up like the next argument or whatever next trial. The next trial that they have of your character. If a guy I was crushing on was kind of that mean to me, that would kind of destroy my attraction towards him. If he calls you a loser, how do you still feel that attraction towards him, right? For me, it wouldn't work that way. Like, you gotta be as invested in me as I am in you for it to work. Ain't no guy worth putting your self-esteem below his self-worth. There's no point. I mean, like, why? I mean, the life is short. This is your life. I mean, what's one person out of 7 billion? I'm sure you can find another just as cute guy who actually likes you for you.
Must have fallen asleep because the next moment I found myself waking up to hearing a rustling sound. I looked over at Amy, and even though I couldn't see anything, I knew she was eating something. I could hear her. I couldn't believe she had food with her and wasn't sharing it. Did James know? I should have said something, but
What a biatch. Like, if people were stuck somewhere in some kind of catastrophe and you had like portions of food, I mean, is it not reasonable that you're kind of expected to share? I mean, like, I don't know, like, or is it every man for himself? I mean, I've never been in that situation, so I don't know.
But I was too scared. I'd already caused enough trouble. Finally, morning came, and by then my phone was at 2%. Soon, I wouldn't even know what time it was. I was bursting for the toilet, so I went to use it, and of course, Amy shouted at me and said my peeing was too loud and had woken her up. Then
Pee, like, it's been like, what, 12 hours?
I realized how pretty Amy was, and it really annoyed me. How could I have thought James would ever be interested in someone like me?
If only people looked as ugly as their personalities, then you could tell. So if a person with an ugly personality, you could tell right away because they're ugly on the outside too. But it kind of sucks when you got like beautiful people, but just ugly personalities inside. And so it's hard for you to tell, you know. How is a poor little human supposed to tell over here? But they can stay away and protect themselves from interacting with you. School will be yanking up the door and then finding a couple skeletons. Ugh. Yeah, Amy. I mean, like, where's she gonna hide her snacks? I mean, look at her clothes. They're just so skimpy with like tight, skin tight jeans and skin tight shirt. Like, where'd she hide that girl?
Under the sandbags, he'd found some old bottles of water. The water looked disgusting, but I'd have drunk anything by that point. Both James and I downed like a liter each, but Amy refused. Suit yourself, I thought. Then about an hour later, I started getting a weird pain in my stomach. Oh no, there was no toilet paper. This couldn't be happening. I had to run and almost puked my guts up. And I wasn't the only one. James raced in after me and
How the wires are rotten, but how Aquafina gonna be rotten? Like, isn't it just water? You lock up water for 20 years and it's still just water? Like, I don't think there are any properties of water that make it change like that, right?
And James and Amy got into a huge fight. Secretly, it made me happy to see them argue. James deserved better. He was super upset that he'd missed his football game, but Amy just kept saying he could go to college with her and then they'd never be apart. And James got really angry and said he didn't want to go to her college. Then the whole room went silent. It was tense.
Oh, so we find out Amy here doesn't want her boyfriend to go to a different college and she wants, in fact, it's actually self-serving for her, isn't it? Like him missing the game. How convenient. How suspicious.
A while later, I heard someone saying my name. I opened my eyes and could see James. He said he could hear my teeth chattering and that I should come and share their blanket. But if Amy woke up and saw me, she'd go mental. I didn't care about her though. James was actually being kind of nice to me for the first time in my life. I couldn't lose my chance. So I climbed under the blanket next to him. Our legs were almost touching. And of course, that woke Amy up. And when she saw me, I thought she was going to explode. James wanted to keep the peace, so he snuggled into her and left me lying there all alone. But I couldn't stop thinking about the moment we just shared. And during the night, I decided to try and get closer to him. I rolled over until I was almost right at his
Cute kittens. And there she is like, oh my god, anime character rolling over here.
He waited until Amy was snoring next to him, and then he reached out his hand and grabbed mine. I felt like,
Oh my god. Sounds like this James guy is a too tiny slime ball. Or, maybe he developed a newfound respect for her.
I couldn't stop smiling. In the morning, though, I was lying there all alone. When Amy got up to go to the bathroom, I smiled at James and he smiled back. But then Amy came out and saw me and said, "Freak, stop staring at us like that." I thought James would stick up for me, but he didn't. He was acting like nothing had happened between us. I was so weak, I just kept napping, and when I woke up from one of my naps, James and Amy were eating biscuits. Where did they get them from? I could almost feel the saliva pouring out of my mouth.
Yeah, where did they get those from? I mean, like, did we check this whole shelter here? Your girl checked this whole shelter, didn't she? One foot to what other foot? Ain't nobody seen any biscuits here.
Mouth, and I assumed Amy would offer me one, but she didn't. They ate them all, and after that, I didn't speak to either of them. I was so mad. I couldn't sleep that night because my stomach was rumbling so loudly. Once Amy had fallen asleep, James reached into his pocket and handed me a biscuit. I swear I almost kissed him right there and then. This was why I had a crush on him. He was actually a good guy, even if he had a demon for a girlfriend. For the next few nights, we got into a bit of a routine. After Amy fell asleep, we'd lie there and hold hands. And one night, James came right up to me, and I could tell he was about to kiss me.
So guy, he's slowly developing affections for another girl in front of his girlfriend's, well, behind his girlfriend's back. Maybe he realizes his girlfriend is kind of weird.
Like 6 days, things were really starting to smell. The toilet, my clothes, it was nasty. And still, James and I hadn't shared a kiss. But for some reason, Amy's...
Why you wouldn't kiss a guy like after you haven't brushed your teeth for like 6 days? Like your clothes can be smelly and like you don't want to get close to any guy at that point. Better they don't kiss. I mean, like, because if she kisses a guy, the guy's always going to remember, how smelly her breath is, how fluffy her teeth are, all that buildup, or like how stinky her clothes are. Like that's just going to leave it a one big bad initial impression.
Still looked good.
Hold on a hot minute here. How Amy gonna be looking so good after 6 days? Like, what's she using? Like dry shampoo? Dry shampoo that she pulls out of her butthole?
So I told her I'd just seen a huge spider, and I've never seen her run so fast. She raced up the stairs to where James was, and I immediately went over to where she'd been sitting. I just had this feeling she was hiding something. Under where she'd been sitting was a loose part of the floorboard. I lifted it up and couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was so much stuff down there. Beauty products, food, a battery pack, even clothes. Oh my gosh, what was going on?
Holy shit, she got a battery pack?
Didn't have time to put the floorboard back before James appeared to find the spider. I whispered that Amy had been hiding stuff. James came running over and pulled out her phone. He knew her password and typed it in quickly. Then he saw some messages that said things like, "I need to find a way to stop him going off to college. I'm scared he'll leave me." As he was reading them and I was eating one of her secret chocolate bars, she came down the stairs.
These be damning text messages, man. You might as well get your fingerprint on the weapon.
"What are you doing?" she screamed. But it was too late. We'd caught her red-handed. She tried to grab her phone back from James, but he wouldn't give it to her. Eventually,
boing! Boing!
She broke down and said that she didn't want James to leave her for college, so she'd planned this. Only meant for them to be stuck down there for 1 or 2 days. Then she said I'd ruined it all by turning up and getting them locked in here. But there was something else. While she'd been talking, I'd been digging around, and inside a pair of her socks was a key. I held it in my hands and watched as James went crazy at Amy. He said he
Oh, biatch had the key the whole time. Try to hang on to your man's here.
couldn't believe he dated such a psycho and that she'd officially ruined his life. Then
Yeah, girl, definitely a psycho here. like so insecure. She can't even be happy for his success. She has to go and ruin it all. All for what? Just so he wouldn't leave her? Like, did she really think that by keeping him in this small town that he wouldn't leave her for bigger pastures, better pastures here?
Best part of all, he turned to me and apologized. He said he was sorry he'd treated me so badly, but actually he'd realized how amazing I was and had enjoyed our sneaky hand-holding sessions while Amy slept. At that, Amy went berserk. She ran towards me and I quickly jumped away. Then I watched as she dug around inside her secret hiding place. Looking for this? I asked, swinging the key in my hand. Then I turned to James and said, she's been hiding this key the whole time.
Yeah. She's been hiding this key the whole time. Now who's the loser here?
Ran up the stairs and undid the lock. James was right behind me and we both climbed out and collapsed onto the ground laughing. We were free! She just stormed off. And James shouted after her, that's right, keep walking. I never want to see your face again.
Yeah, biatch, you keep your booty moving.
And James turned to me and gave me the biggest kiss ever. We could see the janitor running towards us. And before all hell broke loose with our parents about where we'd been for the past week, James asked for my number. And now we're about to go on our first proper date. The worst week of my life just became the best week.
That was such a weird story. Like, you gotta go through all of that, being locked up in order to like show your crush how amazing you are. Alright, I really hope you liked that video. I had fun making it. Oh yeah, check out my other videos here. I love you guys. Subscribe. See you in the next video.